Hello, everyone. Good evening. I am Chris, and I am here to review Andor, episode 4, Aldhani. I think that's how you pronounce it. This is, of course, the new Disney Plus TV show based on the character of Cassian Andor. This is a prequel to Rogue One, which itself was a prequel to the original trilogy. So it's a prequel to a prequel on a character that I mentioned this last time that no one's really heard of. You know, the average person on the street, if you mention Cassian Andor, they're going to be like, I don't know who that is. You'd be like, Rogue One, and they might be like, oh, yeah, I kind of remember that movie. So before the premiere episodes, and I actually do have a review on my channel already for the previous 3 episodes that came out. Before that, I was very apathetic towards this, and I was even kind of debating whether I was even going to review this series or not, because I feel like I've been very hard done by Star Wars in the last few years from Disney. What with the entire sequel trilogy, the Book of Boba Fett and Kenobi, I didn't have high hopes for this one because there's been a lot of shit. There has been a lot of shit from Disney Star Wars to the point where I'm just kind of over Star Wars now. And to a point that still stands a little bit. But I was actually pleasantly surprised by the 3 premiere episodes of Andor. I won't go so far as to say I love the show. But I think what I really appreciated about it was the tone of it and the world building, and we're getting more of those moral gray areas between, like the rebel characters and the Imperials, and it's really interesting stuff. We're really seeing the sense of that civil war really starting to break out, and the Rebel Alliance in its absolute infancy, where it's just kind of like pockets of freedom fighters, really, and they're not really organized just yet under one banner. That's going to come much later, but the seeds of it are there. The seeds of rebellion are there, and I thought the writing was pretty good. I thought that the pacing was very slow across the 3 episodes. I think that was one of my biggest criticisms, and the fact that I don't really love any of these characters. I know it's still early days, but I don't really have an emotional investment in anyone just yet. But what I really appreciated was the tone and how it actually felt mature, and it felt more gritty and kind of adult. It was taking itself seriously. It didn't feel like Star Wars, which is a good thing in a way. It felt very unique. It felt very different. And if you didn't have spaceships in there and stuff, it would just feel like any kind of run-of-the-mill sci-fi show. But I really appreciated that about it, and I'm actually kind of worried that what will happen when we do get into like the super hardcore Star Wars stuff, like TIE fighters. Well, we have TIE fighters in this new episode, actually, so it's coming, but I want it to maintain its tone, because I that's easily the best thing about this show at the moment, is its tone and its world building and its maturity with its writing. People feel like real people. This feels like it was shot by, an accomplished director. I know that throughout this whole series, it's not just one writer and it's not just one director. It looks like, and this is what I did actually want to mention this as well. I think it's going to be very difficult to talk about this show on episode by episode basis, because with this episode, it didn't feel like much was accomplished. And I think that's because throughout the course of this series, they're going to be telling sort of small, like 2 episode or 3 episode arcs. I guess kind of similar to what with Dave Filoni with the Clone Wars, how you have story arcs in those, right? You have your standalone episodes, but you also have like your 2, 3, 4 episode arcs and things like that. And it looks like they're doing the same thing here. So the premiere episode was kind of a package deal of all 3. And I saw some other reviewers as well saying that with those premiere episodes, it was really episode 3 where stuff started to really pick up. And I think that's just because you have to kind of review it as a closed beginning, middle, and end story of those 3 episodes. And I think it's going to be the same again, because Aldhani, episode 4 Aldhani, is the first of a 3-part story directed by Susanna White and written by Dan Gilroy. And where this episode ends, it kind of ended on just a real like, oh, like it didn't really ramp up to any kind of grand finale for the episode or come back next week kind of thing, because it feels like these have been designed intentionally to be like 3 episodes, like 90 minutes or whatever it is, just shy of 90-minute story arcs. So now that they're not releasing them in story arcs, it's going to be very difficult to talk about this on a week by week basis. And I don't think this will be a very long review. I really don't. Next week, though, fingers crossed, I am going to try and get my friend JX Editor on here with me. Massive Star Wars fan. He actually hasn't caught up with this series just yet. I think he's on episode 2 of Andor so far, but I think there will be a lot to talk about with it, and I'm really interested to hear his opinion on it when we get to it. We've got a comment from Bath Time with Vaughn, which says, you watch Westworld. I don't actually. I've seen the original film Westworld, which I actually really enjoyed, and I've heard fantastic things about season 1 of Westworld. I heard that season 2 was kind of terrible, and then it took a few years off and it came back with season 3, and now no one watches it. So are they up to like season 4 now or something? Is that where they're at? But no, maybe I'll check it out at some point. But yeah, I've kind of heard mixed things on it. But I did hear that the first series was fantastic. Phenomenal, in fact. I've actually heard about the first season. Yeah, Bath Time. Yeah, season 1 was amazing. Some of the best TV I've seen. Season 4 just finished. I mean, they haven't cancelled it yet, have they? So I'm assuming they're just going to keep. They're going to keep making it. But without giving anything away, was season 4 any good? Was season 4 of Westworld any good? While I'm waiting on a reply, I've kind of forgot to do the housekeeping this time. I'm very tired, guys. I barely had any sleep last night. I think I've had about 2 hours. So it's been a full day today. So I am kind of powering down, and I need to be up early as well. I need to be up at 6 for work, which is going to be fun. So as soon as I'm done this, I'm heading to bed. So I don't want to keep this one for too long tonight. But do please consider subscribing to the channel for more movie reviews, discussions, and live streams and TV show reviews. Content is definitely ramping up a lot more now, and I've got a lot of things planned for the channel, a lot of video series that I want to do. Including another big retrospective starting, hopefully, fingers crossed, January of next year. But there's loads of other content coming this year too. So definitely hit that subscribe button. Give me a follow on Twitter as well. You can follow me at HobbitFanEditor. And on there, I'll post all the times that I'm going live in the videos that you can expect. And in the meantime, this is an open conversation with you as well. Please feel free to join in. Let me know your thoughts on Andor. Are you enjoying it? And where do you hope the series goes? It's very weird saying, where do you hope the series goes? Because we know where it goes, because we've seen Rogue One and we've seen the original trilogy. Bath Time says, so going back to Westworld, season 4 was insane and has moved the story into something completely different to the first season, but in line with seasons 2 and 3. Well, if it's good, yeah, no, I'll absolutely take your word for it. I'll have to check it out at some point. Says really interesting exploration of themes, if some completely arrogant storytelling tricks at times. I think the thing that put me off was what I heard about season 2. That put me off. And I don't want to invest myself in a TV series that's just going to like shit the bed after the first season. So yeah, I don't know, but yeah, I'll definitely check it out. As I say, I enjoyed the original film. Okay, so jumping back to Andor. So the episode picks up with is it Stellan Skarsgård? I always get mixed up. Yeah, Stellan Skarsgård as Luthen. He picked up Andor at the end of the last episode. Andor had killed 2 of the security officers, and Luthen saw real potential in him. He says, let's direct some of this anger towards the Empire, the things that matter. And, for the greater good, I'm going to bring you into this cause, this Rebel Alliance. It's not the Rebel Alliance just yet, but it will obviously become that. It's still very much in its infancy. So off they go. And then I'm going to be all over the place, really. So they take him to... he hands Andor off to, I think, a character called Vel or Val. I'm still getting used to the characters' names, guys. And he hands Andor off to her, and he says, like, look, he's going to help you in this raid. I think they're going to do a raid of some kind. I think it's where the Imperials store a lot of their, like, finances, I think. They've dammed up a river like this planet. They've killed a lot of the population on there. They've dammed up this secret river, and they're patrolling it constantly with, And I quite like it because it's really ground level. The location shooting actually is absolutely gorgeous. I don't know where they shot this episode, but it kind of looks like either Scotland or Ireland, maybe, or something like that. It's coastal. It looks just absolutely phenomenal. And that's why I love this. You can tell, you can see the money on screen with this. The fact that it's 12 episodes as well, which is way more than any of the previous Disney Plus TV shows. And it feels like, as I said, like an actual director and an actual writer has written this. It doesn't feel like it's been done by committee. The writing is solid. The characterization is solid at the moment. And the sets and the real locations and everything, we're getting introduced to loads more planets in this. It's great. And if you compare this, cinematography wise to Kenobi feels so cheap. So cheap. The way that the camera's like moving like on a shaky cam, and the sets look like obvious sets, and it doesn't look like they've got much of a budget. But this looks fantastic. It really does. Like, you can see the money on screen. And especially in this episode as well, where we finally get to return to Coruscant, which is amazing. When we saw Coruscant, I know it's member berries, but they are actually working it into the plot properly this time. And they're not just going, oh, let's just go back to Coruscant for some nostalgia. No, like, it's actual plot related stuff. And it makes sense. This is the Imperial capital now that the Empire has taken over. And we're introduced to, I don't know what they call themselves yet, and I'm still getting used to the characters, but it's this almost like council of Imperials that are dealing with any insurgencies, and they deal in intelligence kind of thing, and they get proper evidence on something, and if they suspect that someone's conspiring against the Empire or working against them, then they send the task force out to go and stop that. So they are the eyes and the ears, and it feels like kind of a mundane office job a lot of times. It's a lot of people kind of vying for promotions at the workplace and everything, and it feels very competitive. Feels very dog eat dog, despite the fact that they're all working for the Imperials. And we're introduced to the character of Daedra, and I'm going to find the actress's name here, because she's fantastic. So the character's Daedra, played by Denise Gough. Now, when I initially saw the trailers for this thing, and this is just purely because of Disney's track record with Star Wars and the way it handles its female characters. You look at Rey, or you look at Jyn Erso, I think, was better than Rey, but she still wasn't a very well-written character. She was written better than Rey, though, I would definitely say. But that's not saying much. Characters in Kenobi and what they do, it's bad. It's pretty bad, and the writing's never great for them. So when I saw in this, it was just like, oh, here we go. We've got like an Imperial officer. Is she going to be like, not a Mary Sue character, but similar traits to that? Is she just going to be really obnoxious like Galadriel in the Rings of Power? But all of my fears have been allayed with this episode. She is an incredibly well-written character so far, and I love her personality. The actress is fantastic. And I like that she can sense that something's up. And she wants to do right by her job. It reminds me a bit of the security officer in the first couple of episodes, who really wanted to make a difference at his workplace, and he got involved, and the whole operation went awry. A bunch of his officers were killed, and we actually get a little bit of him in this episode. They kind of get reprimanded by the Imperials, and then he is just called off duty, and he's sent home, and he goes back home to Coruscant to visit his mom. She opens the door to him, she slaps him around the face, and then she invites him in. So, and that was it. That's where that storyline went. So, but yeah, this council's fantastic, led by Qyburn from Game of Thrones, who's brilliant in this so far. I like seeing this side of the Empire. I guess I like seeing the mundane day job kind of stuff. And I think that's where my focus has shifted with Star Wars a little bit now. I think it's probably because the sequel trilogy was so safe in just spoon-feeding us everything that we'd already seen in a very uncreative way, that now I am clamoring for some world building and some, behind the curtain kind of things as to what's going on in this world. And going back to Coruscant was fantastic. It's looking better than ever. I love it. being reintroduced as well. We have Mon Mothma, who we saw in the trailer, and I really love that they got that actress back as well, Genevieve O'Reilly. And I think I mentioned this before, but what a career she's had with this character. She played Mon Mothma in a deleted scene from Revenge of the Sith, which I don't think should have been deleted, actually. And that showed the seeds of the Rebel Alliance forming there with Bail Organa and Padme and a bunch of other representatives from in the Senate. And she played Mon Mothma, and she played her really well. She looked like a young version of the character. She sounded like, her mannerisms were absolutely on point. She was brilliant. And then it was cut from the movie. And then fast forward many years later when Rogue One comes out, and they get her to play Mon Mothma again, which I thought was fantastic. And now she's in this show, and she is absolutely brilliant. I'm loving the layers they're bringing to Mon Mothma's character, and even her home life and stuff like that. Stuff that I never thought we'd see in this. And I really wanted them to write Mon Mothma well, because she's a great character. And with Disney behind it now, I was really worried. Although she was good in Rogue One, I'll say that. But I was really worried. I just thought, they're just going to write her in this terrible way. But so far, no. It's all really good. It's good stuff. I like that she's basically playing a character. All eyes are on her. She says that, there's spies everywhere in the Senate. She never feels safe. She's trying to ferry money across, I think it is, to Stellan Skarsgård's character to help him with the cause. And, they're in cahoots with each other. And I love Luthen's character too, because he has to basically put on a show constantly. He has to have a public persona. He has a wig on. He has a lot of jewelry on. He has these very bright kind of camp clothes that he wears. He puts on a terrible Irish accent for some reason. I don't know why he's doing it, but it's not as bad as the Irish accent for the Harfoots, at least. Or it might be on par. But, and then he's having like secret words with her, and it's all, I like it. It's the resistance. It's like, listen very carefully. I shall say this only once kind of thing. And then she goes back home, and her husband, like, that is a loveless romance right there. That is a loveless marriage, because her husband has completely different ideals, at least at this point, as to the future of the galaxy and for what's right, and she's very much against it. So that is just a dysfunctional couple if ever I saw one. And I think he invites a bunch of Imperials round, or people from the Senate, and she's not okay with that, probably because, all eyes are going to be on her, and she doesn't agree with the policies. I think she mentioned in this episode that they cut off some kind of trade route, maybe, or they cut something off, and now this whole planet is starving. This whole nation of people is starving, all because of the Imperials cut off their like food supply or their trade route or something like that. And she's like, how can you be okay with that? So yeah, we're seeing tensions there at home as well. In the trailers, we see Mon Mothma actually in the Senate building again. So I never thought I'd say this in Star Wars, but I want more politics. I want more world building, and that was something that was sorely missing from the sequel trilogy, was a sense of world building. Just going back to the comments real quick. Bath Time says, I'm not really into Star Wars, but it seems to have completely lost its way with Disney. Is there any way back, or will it just be diminishing returns with all their content? With all the content spunked out? That's actually a really interesting question, to be honest, and I could probably produce a separate video on that topic entirely. I think it's completely lost its way, and it felt like Disney didn't have a plan, did they? They came right out of the gate. They probably wanted to try and make their money back. What was it, their $4 billion investment they spent to get the rights to Star Wars and Lucasfilm? And, they rushed out a sequel trilogy with no planning, no overarching story, nothing. They just went straight into it. You don't plan... first you plan a trilogy. You plan the beginning, middle, and end, and then you go make it. Especially when you've got all of the resources that Disney have. And they didn't. They got $2 billion for Force Awakens, so they were halfway there. And then it was like the original plan was going to be one episodic film, one spin-off film, and then another episodic film, and then one spin-off film. And we got that for the first couple of years. They were going to try and spam it like Marvel, weren't they? Just, a film every year, and then who knows, maybe it would have, spiraled into 3 films a year or something, God forbid. And it did start getting that way. So you had Force Awakens one year, then you had Rogue One the next, then you had Episode 8 the next. But then halfway into the next year, not even, I think it was like 6 months, wasn't it? Not even a year, you had Solo come out, and it barely made any money. Some people say, oh, it's because you didn't put it around October, and I think it was probably quite a packed month as well. But I don't care. That had Star Wars in the name. And the argument was that if it's got Star Wars in the title, then it would make money regardless of when it was released. I think that a lot of people didn't like Last Jedi, so I think that rubbed people up the long way. And I think it was oversaturation and also probably apathy. I think people just really didn't give a shit about seeing a young Han Solo film with someone who isn't Harrison Ford playing that character. It just seemed like a really pointless story. Of course, after that, you get Episode 9. And then look at all their plans. Look at what happened. They wanted to do an Obi-Wan Kenobi spin-off film. They wanted to do a Boba Fett spin-off film. And they had directors all lined up for this. They kept saying, oh, Kevin Feige is going to get a Star Wars trilogy to direct. Rian Johnson's going to come back to direct a trilogy. We're going to have a Rogue Squadron film. We've got all of these TV shows coming out. We've got this and we've got that. And the showrunners of Game of Thrones were meant to be getting a Star Wars trilogy. It felt like everyone and their mum was getting a Star Wars trilogy. And where are those films? They've now said that they want to take a back seat from Star Wars on the big screen. Did something get confirmed, though? I think a Star Wars film for 2024, I think. I don't know if that was in that new Disney Expo thing that came out. Was it last week or the week before or something? I seem to remember seeing something about a Star Wars film coming out in 2024. But my point is that they've quickly realized that the returns are diminishing and the critical response isn't that great. And they've completely rethunk their entire process. You're not going to have all of these films coming off an assembly line now because it's like, oh shit, they don't make money. So let's just get some content out on Disney Plus, and that's what we've been getting with this. But I actually think that wasn't Cassian Andor meant to be the first series that was going to be released, even before Mandalorian? I might be wrong about that. But I seem to remember this being planned a long, long time ago, but we're only getting it now. So I'm wondering if maybe the extra budget has something to do with it. But it definitely looks a lot better than all the other shows so far. It feels almost like on a film scale in some parts. It really does. Let's see. Anything else I can say? Oh, this was the bit where... So when Cassian's dropped off on the planet, and I've already forgotten... It's the name of the episode. I've already forgotten it. What was it called? Aldhani. When he's dropped off on Aldhani. That's the bit that you get from the trailers where you've got people of these Rebel Alliance are just straight up walking around with AK-47s. They haven't even attempted to make these guns look anywhere close to sci-fi or Star Warsy. They are literally just AK-47s. And people have produced videos on that before, but I think some people were thinking oh, well, maybe they haven't added the CGI onto it, or maybe this is just oh, excuse me, a take that won't be in the episode. It was in the episode, and it's wildly distracting because they're walking around with seemingly real life guns rather than sci-fi guns, and it did look a little weird. Honestly, that's kind of all I have for the notes. We've got that Cassian's going to be helping out this small band of rebels who are trying to shake things up for the Empire. Mon Mothma's all eyes are on her, and she feels really paranoid. She's having trouble at home. She's constantly being watched, and she fears for her own safety. And there's a couple of name drops in there as well. Scarif gets mentioned. Let's see what else. They talk about moving a lot of construction things to Scarif. Saw Gerrera gets a name drop as well. I can't remember if he's meant to be cropping up later on in the series or not. I forget. But yeah, if I'm going to go into final thoughts then, because I don't want to drag this out for any longer than it needs to be, I'm enjoying the maturity of this series so far. I think that Daedra is shaping up to be a very interesting character. She's played well. You know, there's no sort of like Mary Sueisms or anything like that. The thing is, there's very little humor in this as well. It feels very like bleak and kind of, I don't know, it just feels gritty. It feels a lot more mature. But I'm glad that they haven't just slapped like tons of Marvel humor in there or jokes that really don't fit. There's no characters walking around going like, let's go, Chrome Dome, you know, stuff like that. It's just well-written characters, people that feel like people, that are acting sensibly, that make sense for the character. And it makes such a difference. Like, already the writing is light years better than anything that was on Book of Boba Fett or Kenobi, and even some episodes of The Mandalorian as well. I think, but the one thing detracting from that is because it is so bleak, because it is so stark, is that I don't know how to say this. I'm not necessarily entertained by this show. It's not like a fun thrill ride to watch, but there's something about it that's just keeping me intrigued, that's making me want to see this. I think it might just be the world building, honestly. I think it's the world building and it's the tone. I think the tone for some people could throw a lot of people off, and I could see some people not liking this series because it's just very, you know, it feels, well, it feels like people are in wartime, you know, like an occupied, not even just an occupied city, just like an occupied universe. And people are trying to fight back against it, and people are being oppressed, and that's just the tone of the show. But I think it's the right tone to have. And it makes me wonder what the original cut of Rogue One would have been like, which was meant to be an all-out war movie, which was meant to be very sort of depressive and maybe a little bit violent as well. Before Disney reshot the majority of the film, as they always do. But yeah, I think that's my biggest takeaway, is that I'm not over the moon sort of like looking forward to the next episode of this thing, but there's an appeal there, and there's something that is bringing me back, and you know, I'm intrigued to see where it's going to go. I like the maturity of the writing, and it feels very different. It doesn't feel like Star Wars, which some people could say is a negative, and thinking, well, it's meant to be a Star Wars spin-off show, and so it should feel like Star Wars. And maybe it will feel more like Star Wars when we have these epic space battles, when we have the TIE fighters in there and all the iconography that we come to expect. But at the moment, I'm just enjoying this simple Star Wars story that's got a great tone to it. It's got some very well-written characters. I love the character of Daedra and Mon Mothma so far, and I'm very excited to see what happens with those characters. But I could see how some people would think that, oh, it doesn't have all of these core Star Wars ingredients and stuff that we come to expect from Star Wars, that it doesn't feel like Star Wars. So therefore, that's a negative. So I can see that side to it as well. It's complicated. It's complicated. I'm not really emotionally attached to any of the characters so far, and that's a problem. It's kind of humorless, so it's not really necessarily a fun watch. But I love these actors. I think they're doing really good things with the material. It feels very mature, and I like that in my Star Wars, especially after all the shit we've had for years. It's so refreshing to see someone like a director come on with an actual vision and a good script that makes sense. So yeah, that'll do it for my review on Aldhani, I guess. I don't really have much to add. Bath Time says, make a video on talking about how Star Wars has lost its way. I'd love to see how it can be redeemed, as it brings so much joy to so many people. And here's the thing, like, I thought for the longest time that Star Wars is just dead to me now, that Disney have just kind of milked this franchise for all it's worth, have just sapped all the heart out of it, and it's this shell, this husk of what it used to be. And it no longer brings me joy. When I see the Star Wars name, it annoys me. And it makes me kind of sad and depressed at the shows they've been making and the films they've been making and how they've kind of ruined the story now. And it just doesn't feel like Star Wars. But And even that was kind of having an impact on my love of the films themselves, you know, the prequels and the original trilogy especially. I never really had any intention to ever watch a Star Wars film again, just because I'm that distanced from it. I'm that done with it. But at the weekend just gone, I went to London and I went to see the Return of the Jedi in concert, which has now completed the trilogy, completed the original trilogy at least of concerts at the Royal Albert Hall. It was a fantastic gig, but it was nice to be in an atmosphere of people that were all there that loved Return of the Jedi. Maybe there was, you know, there were some kids in the audience as well that, you know, had come with their parents, or, you know, the dads had bought them or something. And I've always sourced, obviously women can like Star Wars, but I don't know. I think it's because it deals with themes of like father and sons and everything like that. It always feels like whenever you see a dad there with his son watching Star Wars, it almost feels like a rite of passage. You know, it feels like a passing of the torch. And I've always loved that about Star Wars. It's like what Carrie Fisher said, it's about family. And that's what's so special about it. It's true. And I tell you what, when that 20th Century Fox fanfare, classic Star Wars, I'm talking here, George Lucas, when that 20th Century Fox fanfare went up, that got one of the biggest cheers out of all of it. Second to the intermission and the very end of the concert, the biggest cheer all night was the 20th Century Fox fanfare. And then that anticipation. And you know what? When Star Wars came on the screen and the main theme kicked in, something that I've seen a million times. Return of the Jedi is my favorite Star Wars film. I've watched it so many times. A smile crept on my face and I got the goosebumps. And I felt something. I felt something at seeing Star Wars on screen again. And it was a really, really nice feeling. You know, as I say, like Return of the Jedi, I haven't seen in such a long time. But it's a film that I know like the back of my hand, but I've never seen it in like a cinema setting before. And I think just being surrounded by people that love it, you know, for all the good and the bad in it. And it was, of course, it's the new 4K or special edition version. So you've got CGI Sebulba walking through Jabba's palace. You've got digitally blinking Ewoks. You've got Jedi rocks. You've got Hayden Christensen Force Ghost at the end. You've got the no, when Vader throws the Emperor down the pit. All those changes that I hate. But even with them, it's still Star Wars. You know, it's the original trilogy. It still felt like Star Wars. And it was nice. It was really nice. And when Victory Celebration kicked in and everyone's happy and the Emperor's dead, having been thrown down a reactor shaft and blowing up, and the Death Star destroying, and all the planets celebrating, and Luke seeing his father and Obi-Wan there and Yoda, you watch it and you go, that's the ending. That's the ending. It's done. The story is told. You could even make the argument that the story was properly told even in just the original trilogy when it came out. The story was told in 83 without the prequels. But that was it. And then you think like how Disney fucked it after that with episodes 7, 8, and 9 and just completely ruining the story and just destroying everything. To not have Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, and Harrison Ford all on screen together, to never get the band back together again, all on screen at the same time, is the biggest missed opportunity in cinema history. And with everything that's happened now, we're never going to get that chance again. Disney fucked it. I can't believe them penning a script for episode 7 would pass up the moment of seeing the entire original cast on screen together again. I can't get over how stupid that is. But you know what? I watched Return of the Jedi and I got pretty misty. I got pretty misty afterwards. And I think what it was, obviously the film's very emotional as well. There's bits in it that just have always got to me, that really get to me. But I think what it was more than anything was the kindling of that emotion that I had for years before Disney fucked everything with The Force Awakens. It was nice to have that feeling back, even if it was just for that day. And it was kind of like, oh, so that's what that feels like, you know? And it's, yeah, I was thinking to the music and some of the scenes in there. Scenes that had never really got to me were now getting to me. When Yoda died, I thought it was genuinely really sad, and you think about his story, in the saga overall and everything that he's gone through. All the stuff with Anakin and Vader. I don't know. It was good. It was nice. It was a nice feeling. Anyway, I'm rambling. I'm so rambling. Yeah, bath time. You say that you enjoyed Solo. I know loads of people that enjoyed Solo. I think I've definitely seen a lot more people vocal about it now, more so than when it came out. To me, it just did nothing for me. I just thought it was a pointless film. Some like agenda politics shit thrown in there as well. Some pretty cringeworthy shit. But I mean, I guess I'd rather watch Solo than a lot of the other stuff. Maybe. Bath Time says I did that for the Lord of the Rings films. Absolutely incredible. So I've been to see the Fellowship earlier this year. I went to see the Fellowship of the Ring in concert at the Royal Albert Hall. So fingers crossed. I'm hoping that next year's going to be the Two Towers, and then the year after that's going to be Return of the King. And yeah, manly tears will be shed. It will be great. Bath Time says if I ever win the lottery, I'm getting rid of my iPhone and hiring an orchestra to come down the gym with me. Oh, that's a point, dude. What kind of music do you listen to at the gym? Do you listen to film music? I'm curious to know what you listen to, dude. Or dudette. Could be a dudette. I called you dude. That was very presumptuous of me. You could be a dudette. But yeah, I'm going to hang about just to hear what kind of music you listen to at the gym, because I always like to know. Oh, if I had an orchestra following me around. I mean, first I'd have to get myself back to the gym. I used to work out quite regularly. I used to work out about 6 days a week, but I haven't worked out since COVID, which is really bad. I go on daily walks if I can, but in terms of working out, I haven't worked out in a long time. I really need to get to it. I just don't have much free time anymore. But if I could hire an orchestra with me. Oh, hang on. Bath Time says sometimes I listen to soundtracks. I listen to the rock theme tune. Are you talking about Rocky or the Rock theme tune? Because the Rock is the Michael Bay movie, isn't it? There's the Rock, or are you talking about the Rock's theme, as in his wrestling theme, as in Dwayne the Rock Johnson, or are you talking about the Rocky theme? If you're talking about Rocky theme, then hell yeah, Rocky, especially the Rocky 4 soundtrack, should be a staple on anyone's gym playlist. Oh, sorry, yeah, The Rock with Nick Cage. You know what? I have actually never seen that film, and I've heard it's fantastic. As Michael Bay films go, at least, I've heard it's very, very good. So that's definitely on my my back burner as well. And that time says, I'm listening to an absolutely incredible fan-produced audiobook of Lord of the Rings at the moment. Let me guess, is it the Phil Dragash one? If it's Phil Dragash, then that is always my go-to for Lord of the Rings audiobooks. He matches his voice to the characters. You've got the film music in there. It's tremendous. For one person to produce that, it's absolutely flawless. Some mispronunciations of words which really annoy me. But other than that, some mess ups here and there which you could have re-recorded. But on the whole, it's a great audiobook. And if that is the audiobook you're referring to, Bath Time, then I'm going to recommend you one that you might not have heard, or you may have heard. The Hobbit theatrical audiobook by Bluefax. Bluefax. It should be on Spotify, but you could probably find it on the internet somewhere if you can. That is also in exactly the same vein as the Phil Dragash one. But definitely check those out. It's the full book, unabridged, with the Howard Shore film music all over it, and they match their voices to the film characters. It's fantastic. So finish the one you're listening to at the moment, but if you do ever want to go back to it, I definitely recommend those other ones. Bath Time, referring to The Rock, says, watch it soon. It's incredible. I will as soon as I get some free time. As I say, it's been on my bucket list for years to watch it, so I will get round to it. Anyway, guys, I am going to have to peace out, I'm afraid. I'm going to have to love you and leave you. I need to be up for work in 6 hours and 20 minutes, which is really depressing, and I'm so tired. Oh, nice to sorry, you've bookmarked that Hobbit one. Yeah, listen to that for. Obviously, you're listening to your Lord of the Rings one first, so keep listening to that one. Give that Hobbit one a listen, and then if you ever do want to go to the Lord of the Rings, check out Phil Dragash. But yeah, it's good. It's good that you're in the world of Tolkien. It's good. That makes me happy. Speaking of which, for the more content for the rest of this week, in 2 days' time, on Friday, it will be another Rings of Power episode. We're up to episode 6 now, and I'm morbidly curious to see what Amazon have got planned for us next in episode 6, because they're getting worse, I swear. So that's going to be the 30th of September at 11 p.m. British Standard Time. Always a great community every single week that tune in and have a conversation with me about it. We get to share in each other's pain. So yeah, for other content this week, it'll be Friday. And I will be back for more Andor. So next Wednesday, 11 p.m. British Standard Time, once again, we'll be up to episode 5 of 12. So we're in it for the long haul. I think this goes through to November, actually, this one. In the meantime, let me know your thoughts on Andor. Are you enjoying it? What do you hope to see from this series? And who's your favorite character at the moment? As of next week, I will be concluding my 60 Years of Bond playlist, the James Bond retrospective that I've been going on again this year, with No Time to Die. That's going to be 11:30 p.m. British Standard Time, so slightly later. That's going to be Tuesday, the 4th of October. And that will be a massive franchise down. That will be all the Bond films done. And then I will be moving on to something else at some point. But as I say, I will keep you informed of when exactly that is and what I have planned. So do subscribe to the channel for more movie reviews, TV reviews as well, discussions and live streams. Trying to slowly build this community, and it's growing ever so slightly, but it's growing. We're up to I think 117 subscribers now, which is great, and I thank each and every one of you that have liked any one of my videos enough to give me a subscribe. It really does. It really is appreciated. I appreciate each and every one of you. And while you're at it, give me a follow on Twitter as well. Hit the bell icon, do all of that stuff. Because I'll just keep you up to date. Definitely on Twitter. That's the main platform that I'll keep you updated with everything. I think that's everything. So thank you very much, Bath Time, for tuning in and commenting along. It's great to have a conversation. Thank you to anyone else that's tuned in. And yeah, I will catch you on Friday for Rings of Power. Take care, everyone.